Hey folks, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour this week. Good to see everyone. Welcome back. See folks jumping in, joining. So great to have you all again this week. I'll dive into the topics of today's show in a few minutes while we continue to let a few folks into the rooms. Hello out there on Facebook and YouTube if you're watching. It so happens that I'm in a place with a little bit slower internet. So making comments on the YouTube and Facebook while running this surprisingly taxes the internet just by the mechanisms that I use. So if you're out there on Facebook and YouTube, I won't be engaging in the comments there, but that should be fine. It's great to see everyone. And let me make sure. I'll spotlight myself so you can see who's talking. Before we get started, I'll give you guys a little overview of the plan for today. Mary says hello from Pennsylvania. And let me read the rest of this. Working outside today. Have us in your pocket. Okay, well, that's fine. It's going to get warm in there working outside, but we'll try to put a fan on, or it's the air conditioning at least. But yeah, thanks for joining, Mary. I hope you're doing something fun and refreshing. I actually just went for a hike myself. I think I'll get into that in a minute as well. I'll say the general plan for today, I wanted to do two things. One, it's been a little bit since we kind of checked in with folks and, had a little conversation among ourselves. So weeding in the garden, Mary. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, something like that, which sounds rewarding, when it's all done. Pretty soon you won't be able to text back because your hands will be muddy, which is just fine, right? But yeah, just to chit chat a little bit among ourselves, if there's space for it. If people are feeling shy, that's also fine. I also would love to share a little bit more about what I've been doing the past 4 or 5 weeks. I shared about it in a previous session. There's been some clues as to what's going on. I'm part of an artist residency in Woodside, California. And, really not to dive too deep into it because I know we want to talk about pianos, but I thought it might be interesting to share a little bit more about what's going on here. And then beyond that, I have an episode queued up that I'd like to rebroadcast to you guys that I think you'll find kind of fun. And that's one with Mark Perney, who is a great guest. But we haven't been able to have him on that much. He's just, he's a very busy guy, He's running a business. If you don't know who he is, he runs the Supply 88 business, and he creates the piano wire tires as well as some other tools. And so it's interesting to talk to him and hear from him about his process of building a business in the piano industry. We've all had that idea of I want to take this little tool I invented and maybe I could market it, right? And how does that actually work out in practice? But that's a little overview of what we're going to dive into today. But before we do that, I'll just give our general intro and then we'll get moving. So let me bring up my notes to get that going. And I can definitely say welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We meet here every Saturday to meet with and learn from some of the most fascinating folks in the piano world. And that includes manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal here is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. It's an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. If you'd like to keep up with us, attend every live session easily, and support the production of the and growth of this fine show, please subscribe at bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. And likely before we jump off, there's some master classes that happen every Thursday, and some other stuff going on with the podcast that we release, of course. And I'll put some information about that in the chat. But without further ado, I think it's worth just kind of jumping into the topics at hand. So first of all, the way that I'll jump off here is I'll say, if anybody wants to kind of chat a little bit and share what your recent experience has been in the piano industry, that is up for grabs, so you can raise your hand, you could write that in the chat that you might have something to share. I think particularly what I'm finding interesting is, we feel pretty far out of the pandemic, which is kind of nice. And it's there's a kind of level of relief to it. And it almost feels like another level. I feel like this program got started out of the pandemic, and it started just as a little project to give some support to us that basically were out of work and didn't know what was going to happen. And it really turned into something special. But, as we look back on some of these old episodes, it's fascinating to see kind of where we came from. It was a stressful time, and we were kind of going through a difficult period, and it wasn't clear what was on the other side of it. And then, I'd say even up to a year ago or more, we got to a place where things felt, close to normal. But as of late, I know personally, it's felt just like it's really settling into a place where that level of anxiety and nervousness, among lots of people is letting go a little bit. Interestingly enough, here near where we are, somebody did have COVID recently, but it was just kind of alarming for a moment. They went off property, they quarantined for a few days, people wore masks for a minute, but in the end, there's a lot of airflow around here, and a lot of people are vaccinated, and it wasn't as alarming as it could have been. So anyways, I'm not seeing any hands per se or comments that anybody wants to chat. So I won't go into that unless or until I hear from somebody. So with that, I'll go on to kind of the next topic at hand, and to sort of tell you guys what's going on the past several weeks. So basically, I'm involved in an artist residency here in Woodside, California. It's called the Gerasi Resident Artist Program. And it's actually the second time I've had the opportunity to participate in this program, which I don't think a lot of people actually get the chance to participate twice. So I feel very privileged to be able to do that. It was about 8 years ago when I initially applied. And I think many of you that are here know, maybe some folks on YouTube and Facebook might not know, I got a lot of diversity in terms of what I'm interested in and sort of skilled at and kind of practice in. So that's why I was able to do this residency initially. Like, I'm not someone who does a lot of artist residencies. I've only done this one twice. And there's other ones that I probably would be suitable for, but it hasn't been a big part of what I do. But the first one I applied to because it had a very specific focus of mixing the arts and the sciences. And so it's 10 to 12 people in this one session of the year. The rest of the year, it's mostly your traditional art forms like painting, or, it could be even writing or music or things like this. But not necessarily this specific category of folks who integrate the arts and sciences. And so, I'm a piano technician, I'm a musician, and even those two things, a lot of us sort of integrate that technical side and the musical side, right? We could play music, but we also kind of have a little bit of a technical brain. And in addition to that, I'm into some other domains, entrepreneurship. Of course, this is a business that I'm running right now, and I have a business in New York for tuning pianos and some other business projects. And And in addition to that, I studied neuroscience. I went to school, got my PhD in New York City, studying at the City University of New York, doing research at Hunter College and City Colleges, which are under the umbrella of what we call CUNY, and spent about five or 6 years there, doing deep research into and learning into the brain and how it works, and interestingly studying, adding an even weirder twist to everything, studying birds and studying the songs of birds, which isn't necessarily the first thing you think of when you think of neuroscience. But we had birds in our labs, and they're called the zebra finch. It's an Australian originated bird, but there's a lot of them, here in the States. You can pick one up at the pet store. But it basically became the lab rat of birds. So there's a lot of experiments done on zebra finches. They're very easy to keep in captivity, maintain, and so that's become kind of a standard animal model. And the reason why, at least my lab is working on birds as an analog for studying speech and music, or I would say creativity almost in humans, right? So we look to animals for a model of how to study what's going on with ourselves, to learn a little bit, and then we try to extend things into the human realm, just like we might study a heart medicine on a mouse to see how it works. It doesn't exactly mean it's going to work for us, but since they're a mammal and they have a lot of the same systems, it gives us a good path to follow. So we studied zebra finches in our lab, and I also studied another Australian bird that we did not have in the lab, called the Australian pied butcherbird. And my studies really focused on the songs of those birds. So that's really what brought me to this residency in the first place, is because they were looking for folks who crossed the arts and sciences. And I was a musician who was studying neuroscience and also integrating that bird song. And that was a good enough fit for me to join. And so I participated in this program 8 years ago. And the way that I ended up here recently is quite fascinating, actually. I never expected to come back, and I certainly would have liked to, and I'm very appreciative that I'm here. But it turned out that recently, due to some other projects I'm involved in a tech company. When I say tech, I mean it's mostly media and events, called the Edge Of company that I co-founded a few years ago. We're doing podcasting and events in the tech space. And through that project, I met a woman and started to collaborate with her. Our company did, on some sort of creative projects. And her name is Nicole Buffett. And she actually, might recognize the name Buffett. She's actually a granddaughter of Warren Buffett, the famous billionaire. And just as Warren Buffett says, he's not giving his billions to his children. He's trying to be very stoic about it, and to teach, sort of inherently teach this lesson of self-reliance among his family. He has his own distaste for, generational wealth and the kind of problems it can cause. So I can personally attest that Nicole Buffett, as a granddaughter of Warren Buffett, has really had to do a lot to make her own way in the world. But anyway, she's an artist, and we've collaborated on some things. And it turned out, after we had been collaborating for several months, we realized that we had both attended this residency in the past. And through a sort of sequence of events, probably not worth going into the full story on, we ended up back here. We reconnected with the residency on some sort of their efforts to integrate technology into art. And they welcomed us back during this session to do some collaborative work and do some independent work. And so that's what's going on. And I would take the opportunity to share with you all about one of the projects I've been working on here. You might notice that, doing this kind of thing week after week, where, you get together with folks, you have guests, you publish content, you get a microphone, you get headphones, you get a relatively good camera and internet. I've been doing sort of interactive video live content since before the pandemic. I was doing some remote training of piano technicians way back in 2016, 2015, 2016 is about where it started. And I've also started several podcasting things that are kind of like what we're doing here. And so I've gotten better and better at it over time, as we do when we do something over and over again. And one of the projects that I was working on while I was here is releasing a new podcast for my company, the Edge of Company, which I said is a tech company that does media and events. The event is the Outer Edge LA Innovation Festival, which happens in Los Angeles around March each year. It's been going on for a couple of years. We've had speakers there that you might recognize. We've had Mark Cuban came and he spoke the first year. William Shatner was one of our speakers this most recent year. And in order to expand what we did, we wanted to release a new podcast. And this podcast is actually about AI. And basically what I wanted to do a little bit here is not to overwhelm our conversation here with the topic of AI, because, I know you guys, I know piano technicians, and in a sense, we want to talk piano nerd stuff. We want to talk about how the piano functions, how to fix it, how to take care of it. And many of us, myself included sometimes, which is kind of funny, are a bit of a Luddite, where we get a little bit sick of technology sometimes and are not really necessarily chomping at the bit to get involved in the latest technology, social media, all the things going on there. But it's evidence that you're even here on a Zoom call with me right now, that this crowd has a little bit of a taste for being willing to explore new technology in order to facilitate something productive in our lives. In this case, what I consider radio hour and master classes allows utilizing technology to spread knowledge throughout the world in this particular domain of pianos. And we've had a lot of success in that area, bringing new things to people. So I thought it would be worth just taking a little bit of time to talk about the AI project, the AI podcast project, and then of course move on from there. But if you folks did have any questions about that, you're welcome to ask me, and I can give you information. I've been integrating AI in a lot of things that I do. And I'm very familiar with the sort of historical evolution of artificial intelligence and how it's become integrated in be slowly but surely becoming integrated in our society, and then more as of late, more quickly, but just to give you some examples of my overlap with artificial intelligence, when I was doing my PhD in New York, I was able to participate in something they called the Inter-University Doctoral Consortium. I think that's what it was called. So basically there was several universities in the New York area where if you went to one of them, you could just fill out a simple form and get approval to take a class at one of the other universities. You see what kind of their course catalog is, say, hey, I'd like to take that class. You approach the instructor, you say, hey, I'm over here at this university, but we have an agreement. I'd like to take this class. It looks like I'm eligible, but I need your approval, just that kind of thing. And I was able to take a class, which ended up being way over my head at the time, but I very much appreciated, called Advanced Topics in Theoretical Neuroscience. The reason it was over my head, I was studying neuroscience, the biology of neuroscience, and studying birds. But at that time, I really was shoring up my math skills. I'm not bad at math, but there's a lot of foundational mathematics that you need to understand things like advanced topics in theoretical neuroscience. And once I joined the class, I realized, there's a lot of just foundational stuff. Like I could understand it probably, but it would have been better if I took the years before that to kind of get that foundation, as opposed to trying to cram it all into one class. And so the reason I mentioned that class is, there were folks that were in that class with me that went on, again, back around maybe 2015, 2016 time, to go work for some of these artificial intelligence companies. DeepMind was a project that a friend of mine from that class went on to work work for in that got acquired by Google. And then actually, interestingly, one of my PhD advisors on my PhD committee, his name's Gary Marcus. He's also ended up in the field of AI. He's been in a lot of fields. He's been in the field of linguistics and psychology, but became very interested in AI, ended up starting an AI company called Geometric Intelligence. And that company was also acquired by Uber, interestingly enough. And I don't know exactly what the acquisition was for, but I'll guess, that they wanted that talent of people developing artificial intelligence to kind of integrate it into, whatever kind of algorithms that decide, how much you charge for a ride, how you distribute rides to a driver, all the different things you could imagine could be decided and programmed within a company like Uber. So that's just a little of the background of why I have some integration with the topic of AI. And I'd love to just share with you, if I can pull this up a second, I'll just share with you some links, which you're welcome to join, check out and get on top of. Let me put these in the chat. So a few things. You can subscribe to this podcast, which actually hasn't launched yet. It's called the Edge of AI podcast. The website's edgeofai.xyz. If you go to edgeofai.xyz/subscribe, you can subscribe to that podcast more easily. You can link there when you go to the homepage regardless. And then again, apologies if you're out on Twitter and YouTube. I'm popping these in the Zoom chat, and they're not going to show up for you, but so just, I guess, listen and write it down if you're interested. You can also follow that project on Twitter. The Twitter handle is edgeof_AI. And, Twitter's a great place to get up to date on technology news and figure out what's going on there. And I know a lot of you are on LinkedIn. Actually, it's fun to see how active actually piano technicians are on LinkedIn. So we do have a LinkedIn page, and it's just the company page has the handle Edge of AI, no spaces, right? So that's there. And for those of you that are super interested, I can imagine Carl Lieberman attending, because he's in Los Angeles, and I do know he's kind of knows some of these kind of tech people, and he studied math and things like that. So Carl's not on the call, but I feel like he's the type of unexpected piano tuner character that might want to attend our launch event. So in Los Angeles, in Venice, where Carl actually lives. So if you know Carl, you can be like, hey, Carl, check this out. We're going to be doing a launch event on August 2nd. So it's about, 10 days from now. And that will be a space where really interesting figures in the space of AI will be joining. And if you have the chance to attend it, you can you could really meet some interesting people and learn some things. And if there is folks, I know we're all over the world here, but I do see some people who are actually on the West Coast. If you would like to, if you'd like to attend and you'd like a discounted ticket, I'm happy to try to work something out for you. So you can reach out to me, Ethan at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com, and I can help you make sure you get access. And this is a type of thing that if you are interested, it's to get access or get a discount or something. There's not going to be, it's going to be a small focus group of really cool people. And so I'm happy to, I think it's fun to kind of get you guys involved if you're interested. I think, just in the interest of keeping on topics that we generally do in this session, what I would do is say, thank you guys for letting me share this thing with you. It is part of my work here at Jurasi. It fits this category of sort of mixing between the arts and sciences, because, the science is in the topic, artificial intelligence and everything that's going on there. And the artistry is in sort of my podcast, my sort of content creation abilities, right? And just to follow up there, I'd put a lot of effort personally, had been put in charge of kind of branding the event, the sort of the podcast, and concepting it and figuring out what kind of listeners that we want, what kind of guests that we want, putting all that stuff together. I've played a big part in that, and it's been a big focus of what I'm doing here while I'm at Gerasi. I guess I'll say one more thing about it, that to define what it is in case you're interested. The guests will be experts building the technology. So these could be like professors in a sort of physics department or math department or something like that. Then the next category is kind of like folks that are implementing AI in a sort of larger way within their career, their business. So we could have entrepreneurs who have a company that's utilizing AI to offer, their product or service, but that also could extend to artists that are creating art that is a comment on AI and what's happening, right? Or helping people understand what's going on. And then finally, the final category of what goes on with the guests is use cases. So we want to invite folks onto the podcast that can basically show you how to do things with AI, right? So if you haven't done anything at all, you might be able to get started. Or if you're using an AI tool and you're not that good at it, or you want to get better, we're going to be having guests on that will literally show you, oh, this is how I do this. This is how you can do this. Or showing a project that they pulled together that could be, really fascinating to see that came out of, piecing together AI tools and things like that. And our audience is going to extend everywhere from those experts themselves in the domain to the everyday person who just wants to kind of make sure they're up to date with what's new and interesting and productive in the world. So I'll move on to either Mark's masterclass review, a little bit of that soon. But I think just wanted to open it up really briefly to see this, anybody have any questions, given what I just explained about the topics of this new endeavor. Is anybody? I guess I'm curious. Is this of interest to anybody? Are you watching AI? Are you curious? Are you ignoring it? Do you care? Feel free to write something in the chat. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. And if it's silent, we'll move on to some other content because I know my audience. All right. I don't see a lot of comments or questions in the chat. So let's move on to some more relevant content for the Piano Tech crowd. What I thought I'd do today is dive back into this sort of this radio hour with Mark Perney. And so I think what we'll do there is do a screen share, get it rolling, and then we'll just check back in after about 20, 25 minutes of checking it out. It's a good one. And part of the reason I chose this one is that it's going to be coming out as a podcast episode soon. So, and that's, of course, for the Piano Tech Radio, our podcast. So you can go to pianotechradio.com, of course, always to subscribe to the Piano Tech Radio, our podcast. And even though we'll catch a small portion of this on video, it hasn't come out yet. I think it's coming out Wednesday. You can review the lecture, the full lecture on the podcast. All right, let me bring up the video real quick and we'll get into that. Join us. So I'll speak more about that in the future, but today we'd like to focus on our guest, Mark Perney. And yeah. Mark is also an excellent piano tech in his own right. He is a registered piano technician, operates Mesa Piano Service in Mesa, Arizona with his wife, Dawn. They also run pianogoods.com. In 2015, they launched Supply 88 to provide innovative tools for piano technicians. Mark inventions include piano wire tires, which he actually manufactures using a 3D printer that's right behind him. They're a revolution in storage and transport of wire coils for field repair purposes. Mark's been an active volunteer with the PTG for many years. He served on the board of directors 2015 to 2019, Institute team 2010 to 2014, Institute director for the 2014 convention in Atlanta, chaired multiple committees. He's a pianist, guitarist, studied classical piano at the Cleveland Institute of Music as a youth. So very happy to have you here, Mark. And today we don't really have any set agenda. We're just here to kind of pick your brain and have a fun chat with you. Anything you'd like to say off the bat to
No, I just
give an introduction to yourself?
I'm just honored that you invited me to take part in this, and looking forward to chatting with you guys. It's been, you know, I don't know Ethan very well. I've known David for a long time, and so this, I think this will be fun, and don't know where it's headed, but probably just if you want to give me some questions and
sure,
where it goes.
I'm very curious. So I'm always curious at how just these individuals go someplace and start up these incredible businesses that they sculpt for themselves. So I'd love to know how you made it to Phoenix area and made it to your nerdness for pianos, and then made it to a successful pod of businesses in the piano industry.
Well, I'm that's a that's almost
so
a
we
life
gotta start.
story.
We gotta start somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I grew up.
How did you get here, and how did you start your piano career? And
Yeah, so it all started. Yeah, it all started.
All razor, I guess you could say. I'd love to know.
Yeah, so when I was 4 or 5 years old, I started taking piano lessons at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and that sort of set me on a path of just kind of learning how to learn. And I don't know, just say that I sort of developed an addiction to learning new things, and because piano kind of expands your brain. If you've done any research into neuroplasticity and how your brain gets rewired whenever you learn something new, and that opens a bunch of doors. Every time you learn something new, it kind of makes you more receptive to furthering that if you choose to. And so yeah, that was the start of it all. I studied piano for about 10 years. Then I got into the guitar, and at that point I developed an interest in electronics because I had you know, synthesizers, and just kind of was curious, how does all this work? How does MIDI work? And it was fascinating to me. So so I decided to pursue electrical engineering. I went to Cleveland State University after high school and got an engineering degree, and then worked for about 20 years as an electrical engineer, where I designed, sorry, my printer's playing the Star Wars theme here, it just finished. Anyway, it's annoying. I was hoping
I wondered what that little thing was. That's
I was hoping this would be done before we started, but I apologize for the background noise.
It's kind of perfect. I like this window into your world of small scale manufacturing.
It's like
additive
gyro gear loose in the desert.
It's incredibly nerdy, very nerdy. But yeah,
it is. But that's you're with a room full of nerds right now, so have at it, dude.
Yes, we are a bunch of nerds. There you go. Yeah, so what I specialized in was I designed electronics and wrote software and firmware for about 20 years, and my specialty was actually paper currency, recognizing currency. So I wrote, designed the products and wrote the software to, like, if you put in an English £5 note, it would know that that was a 5 and not a 10, and it would know which direction it was inserted. So I wrote software for probably over 60 countries around the world, slot machines, vending machines, all sorts of applications. And so that was what I did for quite a while. And then, but I always wanted to get out of it. I didn't like working for other companies, and I kind of wanted to do my own thing. And then When I got into piano tuning, that sort of opened the door, creating a side business that I could then have as something to get out of engineering and do something on my own. So we started Mesa Piano back in 2007, I think. And from there, I've pretty much, I exited the engineering field as quickly as possible, but now I'm back into it doing all the Supply 88 products that we're doing. So kind of bringing it all together. And that's, and we moved out to Arizona in 2004 because at that time I was still working with the engineering job, and the company just relocated, and that's how I got out here. So hope that answered the question.
And this is going to be totally off topic, and we're not going to talk about it very much, but does your background, which I was unaware of, doing currency detection and so forth, and with programming and technology, does that make you at all interested in Bitcoin?
Yes, I am invested in it.
You are? Oh, are you okay? That's all I wanted to ask, because we're not here to talk about Bitcoin, but yeah, I thought that would predispose you. That's it.
We are not here. So, what I've known, Mr. Perny, over the last several years is that you've tuned for Ravenscroft, specifically for Michael Spreeman at some venues. Is that true, or am I tripping?
Yeah, I mean, I'm loosely affiliated with Ravenscroft. I've worked on their website, did some updates for the website at one point, and right now I'm not doing any concert work because of obvious reasons, but I have been for a couple years prior to the shutdown of everything. I was tuning the 275 at the Tempe Center for the Arts at Michael's request. So that's been a really interesting job, getting to meet some of the top jazz players in the country, a lot of Grammy artists, and a lot of pressure, but and that's not a job I took for the money. It was a job I took to, Michael's been such a help to me, and I wanted to, honor that. And it was an honor to have even been asked. So that's been challenging, but fun.
Oh, yeah, all of that. The fact that you're close friends and trusted colleagues with who I think is probably the greatest piano maker in the world. Certainly one of the greatest piano technicians I've ever seen working.
He's phenomenal. Yeah, I went into the shop to do a regulation at his request, and I thought I was a particular. It was something to have somebody like him looking over my shoulder, and he'd be like, yeah, those hammers aren't perfectly in line. And I'm looking at it, go, I don't see what you're seeing, and he would spot little things that were. I'm like, wow, this is highest level. I mean, stuff that beyond what I would even ever try to do.
The first time he came into my little showroom in LA, and I was all excited about a couple of these pianos that we'd just done, and just try to do our best on them. And he sat down and he played them and said, "Oh, beautiful sound." Then we went back in the house and he started, dinging me. Well, this was not quite right. And this was not quite right. And this was not quite right. And I was like, well, you said it was beautiful. It was beautiful. But it's mechanically just not precise enough. Wow.
Yeah, he's something else. But that's what being the best is, and he is. I mean, there's a lot of people like him in our industry, but he's definitely at the very top, and I've learned from that guy.
So what does your practice look like? What does your clientele look like?
I'm just a piano tuner. we although that's not really what my focus is, and do a lot of churches and a couple of schools here and there. yeah, recording studios, conservatories, and a lot of in-home clients. So
Do you ever find it like difficult managing multiple things? I mean, I'm sure it is difficult. That's a silly question, but do you ever sort of second guess it? Do you ever say, you know what, maybe I want to stop having a supply business, or maybe I want to stop tuning, or maybe I want to narrow what I do down to this and this and this? How do you manage the multiple things you're working on?
well, I think the path that I kind of see myself going down would be to eventually cut back on the tuning and focus just on high-end clients at some point as Supply 88 grows. Last year was the first year it exceeded our tuning and repair business. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so I see that getting bigger, and our piano service getting smaller, and that just makes sense because you know, it's physically demanding on the shoulders and the hands and everything else. So as I get older, I'm not going to want to
On
be.
every,
Yeah.
on everything. Being a professional artisan home service or venue service person is exhausting for relationships, for the work, for the travel, for the schlepping. It's, you know, it's a lot of work. And
Yeah.
so
You have to take care of yourself too.
my dream, and my dream is to tune the pianos that I'm consigning to sell, and like a golden circle of clients, you know, several dozen clients that you know, have beautiful pianos, and I have beautiful relationship with it. That would be, and have other people tuning pianos as David Anderson pianos, which I have. I'm fascinated to hear about your dreams and why you started Supply 88.
Yeah. Well, Supply 88 really started because early on as a tuner or technician, I guess, would prefer to call myself, I became very frustrated with one aspect of the job, which was every time a string would break, I would just go into, like, I just wanted to crawl into a fetal position because I hate doing string repairs. I always have, probably always will. And it was just a frustrating experience all around. But the most frustrating part of it for me was all the various methods I've tried over the years to store the different gauges of wire. Everything I tried was a nightmare, didn't work. It was just, you know, incredibly frustrating. So for years, I tried to think of a way of solving that problem and coming up with a better way to store the wire. And eventually I did. And that's kind of where Supply 88 started as, was
Wow.
all the piano wire tires, which, you know, hundreds of technicians around the world now use them. And that's kind of what we're known for mainly, and probably what, you know, probably going to be the biggest contribution I will have made to the industry as far as innovating and doing something different.
Got a question
You don't
here in the
know.
chat, which applies quite well. Yeah, you don't know. I guess
Ton
there
of
could be more
questions.
as well. Let me
Yeah.
hit this.
You could
Let me
have
hit
more
this
brilliant
question.
creations, Mark.
We welcome you to have more brilliant creations.
I have a few things
So
I'm going to be doing.
excellent. So yeah, speaking of brilliant creations, Jim Kelly asks, there are lots of good. Oh wait, no, that's a follow-up question. Let me go to his first question. How does one get an idea developed to do a product? I had some ideas for piano tools, but it is hard to get a company to make prototypes or do proof of concept. Anything to say on that?
Yeah, yeah, really. I think the ideal way to approach that these days is to do it yourself. The tools that we have at our disposal now that are affordable by you know, people like you and me can allow you to do a lot on a shoestring budget. And when I you know, when I first started, even as a piano technician, the ability to prototype plastic parts involved money. You had to pay some company to do a stereolithography prototype, which, you know, if you didn't get it right, you were out hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands, and you'd have to do it over, redesign, and hopefully after 2 or 3 iterations, you might have a final part. So now you can buy a used 3D printer for $150 and make your own prototypes. And then for, like, you know, anything involving metal, you know, you can get free CAD tools software and learn how to do the drawings, and find a local machine shop if you need metal parts made. And that's probably the way to go. Most of the supply companies are not really doing that kind of work. They're just doing that very thing. They're just going to outside sources. But a lot of things you can do yourself with wood and metal and plastic, and it just, you have to apply yourself to learn how to do it.
The other thing too, people might not be aware of, you know, you got a 3D printer sitting there in the background. I mean, it's not expensive, but it's also not cheap. I know my local library, I found out, has a 3D printer, and, you know, there's all these, maybe not as accessible during quarantine, but coming up here where we can visit places where shared resources are located. There's, you know, kind of hacker labs and maker labs and things like that sprouting out. Lots of places where you can just hop in and use a 3D printer briefly, as opposed to having to invest in one up front. So it could be another resource, right?
That is a great point. And that's before I ever bought a 3D printer. That's exactly what I did. The Mesa Public Library had a 3D printer that, if you took their little class and, you know, signed up on the timesheet to use it, you could do it for free. And so the very first printed wire tire prototype was done on a library printer. That's before I ever bought my own printer. And this one here is the first one I ever bought. It was $1,200. And most of the printers I have are $300 printers. I've got 6 of them right now, six printers that we keep running most of the time, that we can babysit them. So it's gotten a lot more affordable. And, you know, if you look on, well, you know, just a practical point, if you're looking for a cheap way to get into it, a really good printer to start off with, if you can find a used one, is the QIDI, QIDI, any of their printers basically. But if you can find a used one, a lot of people buy printers for their kids, and then they find out that, oh, this is something we're not interested in, and they just sit there, and then people sell them for a fraction of what they paid for them, and they're basically brand new. So that's a great way to get started, just to find a used one.
Wow.
Very cool.
The bottom line is it's an order of magnitude easier to visualize, design, and prototype any kind of tool now than it was 5 years ago, correct?
It's so much easier. There's so many things available to us that weren't before. I mean, you can even most people would have a local water jet or laser jet company that can do, they can cut things out of plastic, metal, plexiglass, anything you want. So all you got to do is supply them with a DXF file. And perfect example, this is for our soundboard duster tools, and this is welded steel. So this is just wire that I buy from McMaster-Carr or whatever. And this piece here is cut with it's a water jet cut out of sheet steel, and then I weld the wire to to this piece. But when I first started off, I would take a big piece of steel bar and cut these out and round them out and grind them, but I realized that, well, we're making so many of these now that I have to get these pieces made, so I don't have to do all that machining and grinding. But it's relatively inexpensive. So just an example of how how a lot of these things are accessible and not very expensive. And this is what it looks
how
like.
many go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. What were you saying? This is like what?
He was just saying that's what it looks like finished. He was showing it with the felt on it.
Ah, got it. Wow. How many tools do you have?
Oh gosh. I mean, ones that we've designed.
Talking about for sale, or it's probably not in
For
your
sale.
entire tool catalog. Yeah, for sale.
Oh,
What's your
well,
inventory like?
if you want, I could give you a brief show and tell and just kind of show you, because I have a pile of them here. I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, because I know that you sell certain things, but I've just never done a quick look at your whole deal.
Okay. Well, as we talked about the wire
I think
tires.
we're just generally interested, so you don't have to worry about the self-promotion aspect. But if you want to kind of make it like an infomercial just to kind of have fun, you can.
Well, I'll just kind of briefly go through a few of the things that we have.
Yeah,
know,
it'd be fun.
Anybody
Good.
who's from the
Good.
Los Angeles chapter, I apologize because you've seen this already. They asked us to do a presentation a few months ago. So this, as we talked about the wire tires, this is what they look like. I think we have a loaded one up there. So they're marked with the gauges, and you can put about I don't know, 3 ounces, 4 ounces, maybe a wire, and they just store your yeah. And so when you're doing a a splice or a repair, you can retrieve your wire without it springing out and ending up all over the place, and it stays put, and you can take out exactly how much you want. Makes it real easy.
And how many different tires are there on the stack?
There's 19 on the stack, and there's 21 possible gauges. So, but you don't really need that many, I don't think. So that's kind of the thing that got us all started.
Just a follow up on
And
that. Just curious.
Ethan,
Do you want to?
is there?
Yeah.
I think there's a bunch of like praise for the tire wire on the chat, if you can read some of that.
Oh, nice. Let's see what we got here. Wire tire demo. Joshua Martell shared that in the chat here on YouTube. Gave a link to your website. Piano wire tire set is really magic. Love it.
Hey,
Yeah, that's cool. There's
Magic Mark
the Gable,
Carney, ladies and gentlemen.
the Gableizer. What's that?
The Gable. Yeah, that's a fun. Roger Gable invented this tool. Actually, this tool for tightening up the wire bends around the bridge pins. So this has been one of our most popular items.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time Jim Busby does a class, we get inundated. But so this hole
Yeah.
flips over the bridge pin, and you can use the pin itself as a guide to rotate the tool, and then the protruding part there then tightens that wire bend around the pin without stressing the pin itself, because if you just take a tool and go in from the side, you're putting a lot of pressure on the pin as well as the wire. And this gives you a real easy way to control and apply that pressure without hurting the pin and elongating the hole that it's driven into. And then we just make the handles. This is a flexible polyurethane, just to make it a little easier to hold on to. But yeah, that's it. Roger's invention there is just incredible. It works so well, and we've had nothing but positive feedback on that.
Cool.
And how long
Yeah.
have you been selling those?
Probably about 3 years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had, I don't know if it was that, it was a tool, it was that tool or one like it. I think, was it, who was it that actually brought that out in
Arlen
one of our radio hours? Was it Arlen Harris? Cool.
Arlen Harris has one, and he worships it as a god of tone.
Did Wayne Ferguson bring it out as well? Like just to kind of, or
I think
explained it or
Wayne did
something?
too.
I think he did too, yeah.
Yeah, it can really
Cool.
clean.
Do you know Wayne?
I do.
Mark?
No, I don't think I do. I recognize the name.
He was he's an executive in the Canadian Piano Technicians Association for a long time. He's been kind of the guy in Toronto, does all the venues and the symphony and everything. And he's just a great guy. Heart of gold, a lot of charity work, long time Yamaha badass, you know, beautiful guy.
Yeah, but I love the name Gableizer. That's funny. Whoever came up with that. So I like that.
It is.
All right, we'll end on a note of praise for Wayne Ferguson and a fortunate reminder of the name of the tool, which was asked about in the chat. So that's great. Thanks everyone for joining. I got a couple direct messages from folks who did happen to appreciate kind of talking about some of the other stuff we're up to. So that's great and appreciate that. And you know, before we jump out, I will just put some of our traditional links in the chat, and that includes, you know, the master classes that are going on, how to subscribe to them, how to attend them. And that's every third Thursday now. If you're a masterclass subscriber, you get access to a new masterclass with somebody cool. We're bringing Doug Gregg back to talk about using tools from other trades pretty soon. That will be the next third Thursday lecture. So make sure you keep an eye out on how to sign up for that. And then on top of that, we just did a good, bad, and ugly lecture of pianos with Larry Lobel. And with that particular one, we extended from what we talked about in our radio, actually, because it was clear that he had a lot of material and people were interested. So we went a little bit deeper into that topic. And just to clarify, that was, you know, like when you encounter those pianos out there, you know, how do you really approach evaluating them to say, hey, this is a good one, this is a bad one, this one's ugly, right? Is it something to sell? Is it something to fix up? Is it something that's going to be a sink of your time, energy, money, or the clients, things like that? So very useful content, especially for those folks who struggle with that often, making decisions about what to do with pianos. So thanks to Larry for jumping in on Thursday and doing that masterclass that's in the member area. As I said, the full masterclass, or the full radio hour that we were just rebroadcasting with Mark, is in the member area for Piano Tech Radio Hour, so you can join there. And then on top of that, subscribe to the podcast and you'll be able to listen to the audio episode if you're interested in more from Mark. That's going to be coming out on Wednesday. Thanks again, folks, for showing up. Great to see you. Thanks for being on this journey with us. And we'll see you next week. I believe next week we'll be able to bring Hannah Ryman back on the show. She's just completing the International Stretto Piano Festival, which my company's helping to do some of the tuning for that out in New York City, and trying to add our support to what she's building. And so I think next week, if I'm correct, I'll update this. If not, she'll be coming back in and give us an update on how everything went. So be interesting to hear about that. All right. Catch y'all later. Have a good week.